In topic 5, we're going to multiply a monomial and a polynomial. So we're going to multiply a single term by 2, 3, or more terms. Okay, so a monomial by some polynomial that has more than one term. Now, what we really need to know here is the distributive property. Okay, this is going to be the key, the heart and soul of what we're going to do for this topic. So the distributive property allows us to eliminate parentheses by multiplying through a sum or a difference. So remember, that's the purpose of the distributive property. Now, when it comes to actually multiplying a monomial and a polynomial, we need to apply the distributive property. So if, in case you forgot kind of what it looks like, this is the distributive property symbolically. So we start right here. We have a times b plus c in parentheses. You just want to multiply the a by everything inside parentheses. So that would simplify to be a times b and then plus a times c. You could also do this with subtraction. The signs don't matter. It's the same process. So if I had a times parentheses b minus c, that would just equal a times b minus a times c. Okay. Once you do that, you will potentially have to apply the product rule. So if what you're multiplying, if the monomial and the polynomial inside parentheses have variables, you're going to be applying the product rule. So remember, the product rule, when you multiply two things that have the same base, you keep the base and then you add your exponents. That's going to be a big thing here. Okay. And then finally, you combine like terms if possible. All right, so example 5 says, find each product and write the answer in standard form. Okay, so for part A, we have 6x times 3x minus 5. So for this one, and maybe all of these, we'll just see. I'm going to show you very slowly, step by step, how to do these. And then, once we kind of get moving in this class, the assumption is you could do something like this without having to show all the side work, okay? So first we have A, which is, like I said, 6x times parentheses 3x minus 5. So I want to take 6x times 3x, and I want to take 6x times negative 5. Now, when I multiply a positive and a negative, it's going to be a negative product. So I just go ahead and write that as minus 6x times 5. So now what we really have is just multiplying two different sets of monomials. So looking right here, we multiply the coefficients. So 6 times 3 is 18. And then x times x, I'm multiplying two things that have the same base. So I keep the base and I add the exponents. There's technically a 1 and a 1 here. So I need to add those two exponents, which is just 2. So I get 18x squared. Okay. Now for the second half, I've got 6 times 5, which is 30. We already know this is going to be negative. So I get minus 30, and there's nothing to combine with my x, so I just bring my x down. So I get 18x squared minus 30x. Okay. Now for part B, we have a little bit more. We've just got 3 terms inside parentheses, no big deal. So I've got negative 7x squared that I need to multiply with 2x squared plus 5x minus 9. So again, I'll show you the steps nice and slow, but the assumption is soon we take off those training wheels and we can just do this without having to show side work, okay? So I've got negative 7x squared times positive 2x squared. That's going to be a negative. So I've got negative 7x squared times 2x squared. I've got negative 7x squared times 5x. So again, that's going to be a negative. So we write it as minus 7x squared times 5x. And then I've got negative 7x squared times negative 9. Multiplying two negatives becomes a positive. So I'm going to write this as plus 7x squared times 9. Okay, and now we really just have 3 different sets of multiplying two monomials, and we already know how to do that. That was the previous example. So I'm going to start by multiplying the coefficients. So 7 and 2 is 14, so that's going to be negative 14. And then I'm multiplying two things that have the same base. We keep the base, we add the exponents. So x squared times x squared is going to be x to the 4th. Now I've got minus, and I need to look at that second term in the middle. Well, I need to multiply my 7 and my 5. So 7 times 5 is 35. And then I do have x factors that need to be multiplied or combined. So I'm going to have a product rule there. That's x squared times x. Remember, there's an exponent of 1 right here. So I keep my base, which is x. I add my exponents. 2 plus 1 is 3. And then finally, for the last term, we need to take 7 times 9. 7 times 9 is 63. There's nothing to combine with x squared, so I just bring it down. And the directions here did say to write our answers in standard form. So remember, standard form is when you write the terms in descending order of power. So you want to make sure you have highest exponent to lowest exponent and then end with a constant if you have one. Okay, so just make sure you're following that rule too. And so far, the two answers we have are in standard form. All right, finally, part C, we have negative 11x to the fourth times x to the third minus 4x. So I'm going to do the distributing part. So negative 11x to the fourth needs to be multiplied by positive x to the third. So that's going to be negative. So I get 11x to the fourth times x to the third. And then negative 11x to the fourth times negative 4x, that's going to become a positive. Remember, when you multiply two negatives, you get a positive. So I'm going to go plus 11x to the fourth times 4x. And now we're just going to multiply each pair of monomials, okay? So for the first half, we have just negative 11 times 1. That's just negative 11. But I do need to apply the product rule for x to the fourth times x to the third. I'm multiplying two expressions that have the same base. Keep the base, add the exponents. 4 plus 3 is 7. And then last, we have 11 times 4. So that's going to be 44. And then we have x to the fourth times x. Remember that x has an exponent of 1 on it. Okay, so I need to apply the product rule. I've got a base of x, so I just keep my x, and then I add my exponents. 4 plus 1 is 5. Now, you can always show this side work if you need to, but we're going to do stuff like this quite a bit throughout this class, so you need to get to the point where you can just distribute, okay? So you need to know how to multiply a monomial by a polynomial, all right? So do definitely review the product rule. The product rule comes up a lot when you multiply a monomial and a polynomial.